Good morning and good afternoon. Thanks for joining us for our episode one in the Lead Nurture campaign series. So, we're looking at three webinars over the next 3 months. The first one focusing on who is your buyer, helping us understand and getting ready for our nurturing campaigns. So, let's take a look at the agenda and we'll get started. So, welcome and who's who will kick us off. We're then going to dive into an ideal client profile and understanding how that can help us in the development of our audience that we're wanting to target. We'll then look at how Eloqua's progressive profiling can assist you in that process as well, and then dive in and have a look at audience building in segments, so crafting the right audience. We'll also just do a quick update on the Eloqua release from May to give you a bit of an update there, and then of course any Q&A. But please feel free to use the Q&A function throughout the course of the webinar. Just some general housekeeping, as you know, we use Zoom to host and record our webinars, and replays are available on our website through our blog. So feel free to visit there anytime to look at past editions or past episodes of the user group. As I said, please feel free to ask questions as we go through the webinar. Feel free to use the Q&A function. Just be aware that that is public and everybody can see those. The idea being generally that you can upvote those as well. So feel free to do that. If you wanted to ask a question that's a little more specific and maybe a little bit more private, please use the chat function to do that. And that'll be available to myself and my colleagues here online today. So who's with you today? My name is Derek Bell. I'm the Director of Customer Success and Marketing at Marketing Cube. And we're joined by Adrian Jones, our CEO and founder, and Sean Camello, one of our account directors. So thanks, guys, for making some time to be with us. Okay, so I thought, given the topic here is to know your buyer, I thought what I would do is turn that around and give you a little bit of an idea as to who's on the call with us. So what we've done is collectively look at data across both the Asia Pac episode as well as our US and EMEA episode and combined them. And so what we've got is 30% of people from education and training. So from Marketing Cube's point of view, that's largely university organizations. Then professional, scientific, and technical services. So that covers IT companies, professional services, accounting, law firms, advisory firms, financial and insurance services, manufacturing, and then the rest kind of make up other at about 18.2%. So we gather this information from you as you complete forms. We typically ask people which industry they're in at some point as you engage with us. And so this is the information then that we're able to use to help tailor some of our communications to you over time as well. Hopefully you don't even notice that. It just simply resonates with you and is of interest to you and sounds like we're talking to you, which we are. That's our objective, obviously. And we feel that sometimes the messaging can be better tailored to different industries with slightly different use of language and those sorts of things, and sometimes imagery as well. Another question we ask people is how long they've been using Eloqua. And it just so happened, we ask this in 12-month increments. So we ask, is it less than 12 months, 1 year, 2, 3, 4, up to, I think, 10 plus years. So I've kind of grouped it into less than 2 years, between 2 and 5. And ironically, you can see it's almost split right down the middle with that group, which was interesting. And then greater than 6 years was 8.9% of users. So we can see the vast majority of people using Eloqua. And I should qualify, this is just people who registered for the user group today and for the Asia Pac episode as well. So there's a good mix there of new users and some more seasoned users, and some very seasoned users mixed into that group. The other question we ask is in relation to overall attendance from, or where you live, so which country you're in. And so from that, we break that down to regions. And so for us, while we may have people identify as being from Canada and Mexico and Chile, etc., and the United States, we would group them. So North America, obviously Chile would be South America. No one registered from South America this year or this month. And in Asia, of course, there are multiple countries, but that represented about 18.9%. And then Australia, New Zealand, which is kind of home office for us, is the vast majority. So that just gives you an idea of how we're collecting information to help us better understand you and how we can better tailor the types of communications that we provide to you. Let's jump in now and have a look at this concept of an ideal client profile and what that means. And I think what I want to try and uncover here today or share with you is the notion of using your own data to better understand your buyer. Because mixed in your data today within Eloqua, essentially two groups, I'm sure there are a few others, but largely two groups. There are those who are customers, those people who have purchased goods or services from you, and there are those with whom you're yet to sell goods or services to, so prospects. So when I talk about customers, they're people I suggest that you have actually invoiced at some point versus prospects that you are yet to have a financial relationship with. And so that just to clarify our language as we go through. And client, customer, I would use interchangeably. Okay. So let's have a closer look at what an ICP could look like. One of the key things to understand, and this really comes back to understanding our buyer journey and the buyer stages, and really understanding that prospects do go through stages. And it really doesn't matter if they're buying a university course, if they're buying insurance, if they're buying a new car or a house, or if they're in fact buying, $5 million worth of IT outsourced services. Whatever the purchase is, there are stages that we go through. And in some cases, those stages can take literally minutes or hours. And in some cases, they can take months or even years to go through. The best example I always like to think about is the university student. Certainly, our experience of dealing with universities across the Asia Pacific region and a little within North America is that relationship begins in high school. And it can be 4 or 5 years of investment of time and marketing and reaching out to these prospective students before they actually have an opportunity to make a decision as to which university they plan to attend. So it really is can be a lengthy process. It doesn't always have to be, but it certainly can be. Now, some of the key things that we want to try and understand as we develop this ideal client profile is to think about the customer's pain points. So what is it that is causing frustration to the prospect that you could potentially assist with? So what do your services, your products do that could help alleviate some of those pain points? And how do we articulate that? What purchase process do they follow? So once you kind of map that buyer's journey, it then makes it a little bit easier for you to start to think about content that potentially could resonate. And we've got some information here shortly from Harvard Business Review and Bain Consulting that I think will be of interest to you, which we'll jump into that here in just a second. What we're able to do then as marketers is to define what messages are most appropriate at each stage of that buying cycle, who's responsible for delivering each communication within the business or within your business. And the other thing is, of course, good marketing or good alignment between marketing and sales will help keep the branding, the voice, the messaging, and the experience consistent. Don't underestimate the data that can flow in from the CRM. So as the sales team and others within your organization are having touch points with prospects and potentially customers, if we consider cross-sell, upsell opportunities, that there can be some good data that can flow in from the CRM platform. We just need to make sure that Eloqua has visibility to that data so that you can, in fact, use it and use it promptly as it becomes available. So in doing some research for today's webinar, I stumbled across some information I found through the Harvard Business Review, which was in fact a report developed by Bain. And Bain had been through the process of developing what they called the B2B elements of value. And they've organized them into 40 distinct kinds of value. Essentially, the B2B offerings provide customers, and they've put those into a pyramid with 5 levels. And that's the pyramid that you can see there on the screen. Now, that's probably maybe a little bit difficult for you to read, depending on what screen you're on today. So I'll have a QR code here for you shortly. So just grab your smartphone and you'll be able to scan that here in just a moment. But the most objective kinds of value are found at the base in this particular example. Then they call those the table stakes. So that's the things that are just kind of not negotiable, really. We must be able to meet expectations. It needs to be an acceptable price. Regulatory compliance is important. Those boxes just have to be ticked. There's no if, buts, or maybes on that one. And of course, ethical standards. So they're the critical things. They're the baseline. If you can't meet those, you probably should walk away. I'm sure hopefully all of us can meet those objectives. Up from that is the functional value. So looking at broken into economic and performance. So what is your solution offering? Will it improve the top line? Will it, reduce costs potentially? Does it somehow impact product quality? Is there scalability? So as the prospect's business grows, is your solution in a position to be able to grow with them? And innovation. People are always looking for innovation. And so we kind of go up that list. Ease of doing business value comes next. Individual value is towards the top, and that inspirational value at the very top around vision, hope, and social responsibility. And we've certainly seen a lot of organizations start to really beef up that aspect of their website as they want to make sure that they're able to communicate with people about those things that they do within the community, their social responsibility, their vision as an organization for their employees, but also for their customers as well. Now, there was one particular point in there, I'm not sure maybe if you've noticed it just yet, but under personal, it talked about reducing anxiety. And so considerations such as whether a product can decrease anxiety plays a large role. Interesting, right? So here's a challenge for you. How do you communicate through your marketing that your product or service can decrease anxiety? So the research there from Bain tells us that this is something that people are looking for. I kind of had not really thought about it too much in relation to the types of work we do, not specifically in the context of anxiety. And I'm still trying to think how I could, as a marketer, articulate that besides overtly saying it. How do I articulate it? So there's a challenge for another day. That QR code right there will take you to that Harvard Business Review article. So I'll leave that on the screen there just for a moment so you can scan that with your mobile device. The next thing we want to look at is using segments and insight to help you uncover some of the information. So as we said, in your database today, you've got a whole range of data linked from an account level and at a contact level, and typically divided into two groups, customers and prospects. From a customer point of view, taking a step back now, just away from the data for a moment, think about this concept of the ideal client. Most of us can probably look at our client list today, scan down that client list and look at and go, well, you know what? These are great clients. These are great clients. These guys are a little high maintenance, but they're good clients. These clients are okay. These guys never pay their bills on time. These guys are extremely high maintenance, etc. Right? So we can start to see that notion of an ideal client can be limited, maybe depending on the size of your client base. So what we want to do is look at those ideal clients and understand the aspects or the data points that you've got that are going to help you find more people like the ideal clients that you want. That means you need to go through a process of identifying the data that you have to help you identify the ideal client. So this is maybe usually done on a whiteboard, probably in a room where you would have a mix of customer service, sales, finance, and marketing collectively coming together to arrive at what this ideal client profile might be. Now, there are organizations out there who can literally spend a couple of days with you to facilitate these types of things in workshops. I think you can start yourself, certainly on a whiteboard, getting some basics together. But as I said, there are certainly organizations out there who can assist with this sort of facilitation of a process. The key thing I'm trying to understand is once you arrive at an ideal client profile, are you then in a position to be able to go to Eloqua or maybe to the CRM platform and using the data that you've got, can you build an audience based on the parameters you've identified that make up an ideal client profile? For example, if somebody having a good credit rating with your organization, and finance, I'm sure, have ways of calculating that, they pay their bills on time, they're never late, etc., those sorts of things. That's good information, but how is Eloqua going to know that information? So if that information possibly exists in an ERP or a finance system of some sort, does that information make its way to the CRM? Now, if it makes its way to the CRM and Eloqua is integrated, then there's no reason why we can't expose that value to Eloqua as well. So once it becomes exposed to Eloqua, then you can use it as a filter. Now, that helps you identify existing customers that make up your ideal client profile. That's fabulous. That's great. What we want to then be able to do is to take those values and help us go through our prospective database and to see how many prospects we have that may also fit some of those. Now, of course, if they're good payers or not, you're not going to know that. That's not a piece of data you're going to have from a prospect point of view. But you'll have other points of data, and maybe it's some of the ones that you can see on the screen here today. So the account type of customer, obviously, that's in the research stage. Obviously, once you start to focus on prospects, that account type would probably need to be something like prospect, so you can differentiate. And my general experience in this industry, and I've been playing with data and CRMs and marketing platforms for nearly 25 years. The one challenge that too many customers that I've spent time with have is actually being able to quickly and easily identify their customers within the CRM or within the marketing platform. It shouldn't be that difficult, but sometimes it proves to be for some reason. Make sure we've got all that down. That will then help you to shape audiences and then obviously shape messages. Now, there will be obviously information missing. And so from the point of view of information missing, that's where we'll jump into our next step today and look at forms and specifically progressive profiling and how progressive profiling can help you complete that profile information that you may be missing in some of your prospects. Okay, so at the end of the end result of the above is, of course, in Eloqua. Eloqua is a tool designed to help you communicate with people. We don't send emails to a business entity. We can only send emails to humans or to an email account more specifically, I suppose. But all of those values combined will probably be more firmographic in nature, as in looking more at the business entity per se. We may then get down to demographic detail as well. That can be helpful, obviously, but that would be another step in the process. Now, if you're in the consumer space as a marketer, and thank you for joining us today, and certainly somebody like the university sector would be probably more a B2C type of relationship, right? So a university is typically selling to an individual and what they may be doing. Now, there are probably other business units, certainly within the Australian, New Zealand marketplace. Universities will often sell services to businesses where staff can attend certain sessions. Okay, that's a little bit different, but largely it's universities talking to high school students and sort of first year students, etc. So those questions might become a little different. And so I thought a university example would be one to share here. But the nature of the questions that we ask in this example, as we now look more at demographic information versus firmographic information, is they become a little bit more personal. So preferred methods of learning. Are you an on-campus type of person, or is online learning your absolute preferred, or maybe a hybrid of the two? Are there, what are the community interests of this particular individual? Do they like to volunteer? What sort of opportunities would they be looking for potentially? And that would help you shape future communications to that particular person. Social clubs is obviously a big one as well, and trying to get interests early, I suppose, of prospective students to help align them with different social clubs on campus can be a valuable exercise. And then, of course, the type of study that they're after. Is it undergrad, postgrad, or doctorate studies? Any of those. So again, that will help you adjust the level of communications and the type of communications that you would send through to that person. But you can see how that becomes a little bit more personal or demographic. And I suppose you could argue almost a little psychographic in there as well, as you start to look at things like what sort of volunteer opportunities, community interests, career aspirations. Those questions are a little different again. How you capture those, we would typically use a form, obviously, to capture that information. Now, how you store that information is also something that needs to be considered. So as you know, in Eloqua, you've got two options. You've got the contact to store things on, which is a one-to-one data relationship, or on a custom object, which is a one-to-many relationship. So let me give you an example. So home country or state, that would be a prime candidate to be loaded onto the contact. It's a one-to-one data point. I'm a single person. I live in one country and I live in one state. However, when it comes to primary course of study, and if you consider the life of the engagement of a prospective student with a university, it happens potentially over 4 or 5 years. And there's every chance that that young prospective student is going to have changes. This week, they want to be a doctor. Well, maybe not this week, but this year they want to be a doctor. Next week, they want to be maybe a specialist within the medical field. They start to kind of narrow things down a little bit, or they may change completely and decide they want to do engineering. There can be benefit of keeping that information on the contact in Eloqua, but if you do keep it on the contact, once they provide you with an updated value, you then lose the previous that was mentioned. If we store that information on a custom object, you'll actually keep history of it. So each form submission, each time they provide you an answer around their primary course of study, then that will become a new line entry within the custom object database. So you then have a history of what's going on. So if having a history of the different responses to that same question that have been given over time, if that's of value to you and you feel it could be used to help you segment or tailor different types of comms, then moving that or saving that data to a custom object will be a much smarter way to do things. Okay. So let's move from there into progressive profiling, where we now talk about gradually collecting key demographic, psychographic, and firmographic data over time. And it really is a long-term play. And certainly from a B2B point of view, or even a high-value B2C relationship, typically these things take place over time. People don't think about something on a Monday and then purchase it sort of by lunchtime on Monday and have it delivered Monday afternoon. That's largely not the space most Eloqua customers are in. So, progressive profiling, learning about people over time. This is a great feature within the Eloqua platform, and you experience it every time you register for the user group. And I'll show you here shortly the form that you registered on and how that progressive profiling actually functions. Once you've got your ICP in place, your ideal client profile, you can then create a series of questions to help you uncover the following. So, demographic, psychographic, and firmographic information. And so we need to think about the types of questions that we can ask and how we want those responses to come in. I generally like to say that a free text field is the enemy of a modern marketer, because once you have a free text field, there's just not a great deal you can do with it. Using vague terms like, this field contains the word, that word, this word, that word, it just gets really messy and inconsistent. So providing people with checkboxes or with single select pick lists are probably the cleanest way. And it also speeds up the process for them in relation to completing the form, and then provides you with far more consistent data that you can use from a segmentation, personalization point of view in your future campaigns. What I would encourage you to do, and the only time I've really seen this work super effectively, is when organizations create form templates. Because remembering to build the progressive profiling and to remember all of the relevant questions that you want to ask is typically not something we can all store in our head. So creating a form template can be a good way to do it. And in some cases, that means creating multiple form templates for different types of things. So you might have an event registration form, you might have a webinar registration form, you may have a thought leadership download form, you might have a contact us or inquiry type form. But included in the templates across all of those are your questions from a progressive profiling point of view that will help you build out the information you need for your ideal client profile. So this is the form that you filled in today or recently in order to register for the user group for this month. And so this month we provided you the ability to pre-register for 3 months in advance based on the topic that we're doing. But that highlighted area that you can see in the teal colored box is the progressive profiling section. So you can see there we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different questions. Now, of those 9 questions, and the instructions are up here in the top left-hand corner, first of all, those fields are being presented in a list view, which means we start at the top and we work our way to the bottom. The next criteria is to only display one of those fields at any single interaction. So when you registered, for instance, you would have seen one of those 9 particular fields being presented to you. If you didn't see any of those, and you're probably having a hard time remembering, which I fully appreciate, but if you saw none of them, that would mean that we already have all responses from you in relation to those particular points. Now, I've turned off the randomize field function. Now, the reason I turned off the randomize fields is because what we've done is we've positioned at the top of that list what we feel are the most important questions that we would like to get answers to in the context of our ideal client profile. Then below that, we've got only display empty fields, which you can see is turned on. So with that one turned on, that means that if I have responses to any of these, they immediately get hidden. If we don't have your job category, then that would be the first thing that you would in fact see in that drop-down list with the progressive profiling. If you think about your questions, so think about your ideal client profile, then you need to think about the questions that you can ask that will help give you answers to help you frame your ideal client profile. They're the questions that we need to put into Eloqua within our progressive profiling. All right. So progressive profiling, like all contact fields, is based on contact data, not custom object data. Okay. So just have a think about that in relation to where you store these questions and where they're going to be made available. So another way that you can look at some of your existing data to understand how good the data is and how much you've actually got available, there is an insight report that you can access called contact field analysis. And what this does, it doesn't show you every single contact field, but it shows you the main sort of demographic type of fields that you would want to have a look at. And so you can see there by the legend, the red is showing percentage populated, and the navy is percentage of missing values. So in Marketing Cube's world, you can see we have very few fax numbers stored in our database, but we have, moved too quickly there. You can see we have we have email address, obviously is 100%, which would be on yours as well, because you can't have a contact in Eloqua without an email address. Country, you can see for us, is highly populated. So we only have a fraction of our database. And I think most of those, I do keep a check on those because that is important for us, is mostly test data. So that's why that one's kind of blank usually. Company name is really important again for us. We are a B2B organization, so knowing who we're talking to is really important. Geography is also important, to city, etc. But as I said, with fax, I honestly cannot remember the last time I sent a fax to anybody. I may have had hair when I last sent a fax. So yeah, that's nothing that we're really interested in. Now, below that, you actually get the numbers. So you can see the actual numbers and so on and so forth. Now, the reason this is helpful is if somebody in the business gets excited around job title and feels that job title is a critical piece of information that you need to have, you can at least come in here and get a quick glance. And you can see for Marketing Cube, what are we looking? About just below 70% of our database. So contacts in our database, we have a job title. So that's pretty good. But there's still work to be done, and so that falls back into our progressive profiling and kind of prioritizing where that field gets asked, essentially. Okay, so this is one way you can have a bit of a closer look at that. All right, let's jump in, and I just wanted to show you a couple of those different aspects of progressive profiling, and so you can see how that works. Okay, so this is the form that you filled in to register for today's webinar. So you can see it's all the standard fields here at the top, as you see, so sort of moving through. And then as we get down here, if I hover there, you saw the progressive profiling pop up, right? And so if I wanted to add more fields here, I can certainly do that. All I need to do is come back over here. Let's grab something. Okay, well, I'm never going to ask somebody their age, but that's how it works, right? So you simply drag the relevant fields in place, like so. If you wanted to add a custom field, you can absolutely do that as well. And you can see as you look at the various options down here, you can do custom fields. You can drop in a single select or a single line text if that's what you needed. The other thing you can do is make these required. Now, when you say make the field validation required for a field that you've added to progressive profiling, it simply means that the field is required should it be displayed based on the logic that you assign here under your configuration. So you can see you've got two options of list and stage. Stage, I'll explain here in a moment. The number of fields that you want to display at any one time. As you see here, I've just selected one. I chose not to randomize, as I said earlier, and I only want to display empty fields. Now, there may be instances where you, in fact, want to display a field even if you already have a value in there, because depending on the type of questions that you're presenting, they could be questions where a response may change over time. Job category, for example, if people receive a promotion, the job category may change. If you think about the university student and maybe you have a single select pick list with your primary course of interest, that again may be a particular question that that needs to be checked and rechecked across different interactions with those prospective students. So you have options there to play with. Um, so yeah, you can move that around on your form as well. So that whole block gets moved as you play with it like so. And then the rest really down here, these are all hidden fields in the back end here that you can see. So that's progressive profiling. So as I said, the way it works best is when you actually create it as a template. You can imagine having to remember all of these relevant questions that line up with your ICP, your ideal client profile. Trying to remember those every single time is just kind of madness, right? So much easier to come in, create your form, save it as a template. And here you can see as I open my template for the user group, this was what will happen for next month. There it is, Shazam. It's already there and it's pretty much ready to go. I just need to tailor a few of the hidden fields and my form is largely built. All of the processing steps, again, are in place. All of the logic that I need is already done. I just need to complete a few extra bits and pieces. I don't have to remember to try and do all those different things every single time. The other nice thing, of course, from a template point of view, is that you then get consistency at the same time. So the consistency is, I think, just as important. All right, so crafting the right audiences. So using your segments to help you build highly targeted audiences. So there are different ways that you'll go about this. You're going to do a range of advertising in different channels to obviously get net new additions to your database. That kind of gets them into the database. From there, we then want to be able to nurture them. And that's really what this 3 months is all about. Today is all about knowing the buyer and trying to uncover as much as we can about the buyer, and then using segments to really craft our audience and kind of hone our audience in the most effective way possible. So audience design. Your ICP will be made up of multiple points of data, and hopefully by the time we get to this point, those things have been agreed within the business. Now, you may discover that some of the key data points that you need are not visible in Eloqua today. It's not necessarily the end of the world. Integration updates can be made, and integration may, in fact, be the answer. If you've already got your integration set up with the CRM platform, but perhaps a piece of data is available from the ERP or the financial service system within the organization. If you already have integration between the ERP or the financial system to the CRM, maybe just create the update there and then have the integration between Eloqua and the CRM updated to bring that data into Eloqua. No need to be creating obscure and additional integrations from Eloqua, bypassing the CRM over to the ERP, just not necessary. If you've already got existing integrations in place, just run the path of least resistance and usually the lower cost as well at the same time. The other thing to keep in mind as you discuss the ideal client profile, because I've sat in meetings that I've facilitated with clients over the years, and somebody will inadvertently say, well, they may not be this and that, but they're a great client. Well, yeah, they are. I'm sure they're a great client. But what we're really focusing on here is the ideal client. Okay. It's not to exclude other customers in any way. Obviously, we're grateful for all customers, but this is really focusing on ideal. Okay. So don't discount others that don't meet your criteria, because as I've said here, one of the key things that may be missing is just simply data and information. So as you look at your prospects and you look at the information that you have available and you see it from a segmentation point of view, don't look at it and think, oh, gee, we don't have that many. Look at it as information that we just don't have yet. So there's plenty of potential ideal clients out there. We just simply need to gather more information to help us get a better picture of who they are, the business challenges that they have, or the problems that they have that only you can solve, or that you can solve better than your competitors can solve. Now, digital body language will also play a part in this exercise. So once these people come into your database, these are the net new prospects from your advertising across different channels. Once they come into Eloqua, while you may not have massive amounts of profile data yet that will put them anywhere near being an ideal client, what you do have is access to their digital body language. And that's an important part of this whole exercise as well. So let's jump in and just have a quick look at an example as to how you can start to unpack some of that information. So this is an example. I just sort of threw this together looking at, this is Marketing Cube's live instance of Eloqua. So we're looking at real data here. What I've done is I just thought, well, let me think of prospects that we have within the system and how we might reach them and so on and so forth. So one of the key values for us would be the value of them being a prospect. And we actually have that data point within our system. And so within Eloqua, we call that an account type. And here you will see all of the different account types that we have. And so I would want to focus on either on prospect, or I might say exactly not a customer. Okay. Slightly different way to get the information. Of course, if I say exactly not a customer, that does mean that I'm going to include vendors, PR people, prospects, etc. So you just got to think through your logic and what's going to work best for you. But let's focus on exactly prospects. So I'm going to say that, save it, and see what we come up with. Okay, so 500 plus, 554 people. And what's happening here? So this is based purely on really demographic data at the moment, because we're focusing on industries. For this example, I've chosen financial and insurance services, professional and scientific services. Just for the exercise, let's throw in, and in my world, whether I use a contact or account field does make a difference. Probably too difficult to explain in the short time that I've got available to you here today. But let me change that to, I will add education and training. Hit save. So now I've added a third industry that people have shared. Oh, hang on a minute. My number went down. That shouldn't work. Okay, so the reason my number went down is because I didn't change the operator here. That should be or and or. Okay, so let's hit save again and see what happens. All right, so we've jumped up, which is good. So now I've got a few more people there to potentially play with. Now I can always click on view contacts and start to get a better look at who makes up this information. And by viewing the contacts, I'm also then in a position to look at other key pieces of data that might be missing, that I want to help try and obtain to flesh out that information a bit further. The other value that I put down the bottom here was geography. So again, I could add to that if I wanted to. So depending on how this is set up in your instance of Eloqua, you may have to do it country by country, unless you actually have regions set up. So we have regions set up, and let's add North America to that list and click on save. Okay, so it's jumped up a little, which is good, and heading in the right direction. So now I'm starting to craft my audience. But as I said, this is really all looking at purely demographic data. There's no digital body language. There's no demographic information here, really. It's really, I suppose it's really firmographic, right? Mixed with a bit of demographic. Okay. But if we wanted to start to look at digital body language and maybe looking at email engagement, let's say we wanted to look at opened any email. So now we start to look at who's engaging. So I'm going to change that to at least, and let's say at least 2 times within the last, let's say 12 months, just for fun. Now, the key thing here, whenever you're building a segment that I would always encourage you to do, every time you add a filter, hit save. because save is if you don't hit save and you add multiple filters and then you hit save and there's a significant change in what you've done, then you really have no idea how we got from 700 down to 100, for example. Okay. Whereas here I can see very clearly that, okay, there's some work to do in order to really engage with those three particular industries that are prospects within our system, and looking at email engagement behavior. Okay. So there's all sorts of ways we can play and filter with that, but that at least gives you an idea as to how you can mix your demographic, firmographic, and then engagement data to help you craft audiences. All right. So the last portion for today's webinar is having just a quick look at some of the updates from the release in 23B, which was released in May last month. So one of the big changes is Redwood, and you may have noticed Redwood on display there as I was navigating a little bit through Eloqua. So Redwood is available in controlled availability, and what that means is you simply need to log a service request with Eloqua, simply requesting access to Redwood. Now, when you do that, you can either request access for your entire Eloqua user community, or you can nominate individual users. You just need to provide their email addresses within the service request at that time. Look, at Marketing Cube, we're encouraging our clients to give all users access to Redwood. There's really no point in holding back because it is the future. Those changes will continue to unroll over the coming releases. And so there's really no point in holding back and then just dumping this entire new user experience on people when there's no longer an opportunity to jump backwards and forwards. So let me just quickly show you that. When you're in Eloqua, so if I go back to the home screen, you can see the appearance is quite a bit different if you're still using the previous version of Eloqua. What you're able to do once it's activated, you can see here is use Redwood theme. So if I uncheck that box, things change and we go back to the standard Eloqua. Again, I can reactivate it at any point by simply checking on that box. The browser will refresh, the interface will change. You'll see it just takes a second to load back into Redwood, but that does give your user community the ability to turn it on and off. So there are a few areas within the platform, namely this area, the home screen, then also the contact area of Eloqua has been updated. Then I think the other big one was under microsites. So microsites has also been updated. And there was one other area, and it's going to escape me now as to which it was. But yeah, let me just show you in contacts. The big change there is how you access the contact and what the contact looks like. So now what happens, obviously that screen looks different, but now when you double click and access the contact, presentation of the information you have is, I think, much, much better. You get a lot more information on the screen at one time versus having to navigate through the little tabs on the little pop-up window that we received previously. So quite a different experience. And I think a lot more data essentially becomes available to you. So it's kind of cool. And we click on the arrow to get back to contacts. So that's Redwood. So if you don't have Redwood available today, I'd certainly encourage you to raise a service request or get your administrator to get onto that as quickly as possible. The other big thing was reporting APIs. So this is now what they call a limited controlled availability program, where customers essentially had to request to be a part of that program. That request process has now concluded, and those clients have been selected, have been admitted to the program. Marketing Cube has been one of those, which was great. And so we're now having a play with that. So what does this mean for you, though? Essentially, what this means is that the Insight Data Warehouse is now more available for you to extract data and bring it into your third-party reporting platforms that you may have. So you may have enterprise-wide analytics programs that are in fact collecting data from CRM, from the website, from online systems, a whole range of systems, while your Eloqua data now can be far more easily accessed and delivered to those platforms to assist with analytics as well. So that's really exciting. So as that unravels and as our team go through some prescribed processes that have been requested by Oracle as a part of the limited controlled availability program, we'll keep you updated on what's happening there. If you're a big user of custom objects, the ability to see very easily a custom count or a count, sorry, of your custom objects is added to the marketing operations center, and improvements to segments. The big improvement there is nothing for you at the front end. That continues as you've always done it. It's how things are calculated in the back end and the way the processes are run to be more efficient in order to return a result to you much faster. Now, if you're kind of like Marketing Cube and you have smaller segments in the thousands, tens of thousands, look, you're probably not going to really notice a difference. However, if you're running Eloqua with segments of hundreds of thousands or even millions of contacts, then you probably will notice a significant difference. More ongoing good investment, I think, by Oracle to kind of get some of the meat within a platform functioning and powering, and certainly segmentation is an area of the platform that we all use every day. So that's good news. All right. So what did we cover off today? So essentially, in this first episode, key points to revisit is the ideal client profile, understanding how to create that and then use that to flow into things like progressive profiling within the platform and the form function, and how to build more targeted segments that reflect your ideal client profile, and then blending in digital body language around email behavior, form submission behavior, website behavior, all those sorts of things. So join us next month in July. And so we'll be now talking about designing the nurture journey. So we've got our audience down. We understand who our buyer is. Now it's about tailoring a journey for those people who have come into the platform that need nurturing. Using the data that you have to personalize. So as you collect data over time, that will help you hone and develop your nurturing campaign to be more personalized. And then also we're going to explore lead scoring and how lead scoring can be used even at those early stages. It's not a marketing qualified lead yet, but the lead score model is working its way through, and it is scoring, etc., looking at changes and new information that's being added. And so that will be another way that we can help direct and move people on the campaign canvas. So thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate you making some time. If you do have any questions, of course, please feel free to reach out to me. You can email me at any time. I'm happy to have a chat. If there's anything we can help you with in relation to your use of Eloqua, integration, campaign services, technical support, any of those things, we'd be more than happy to have a chat with you. So thank you very much for joining us today. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we look forward to seeing you in July for episode 2. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great day.